Hi, this is Dr. Scott, and today it's 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, but I've been up since 2:45. I actually had a really interesting prayer time. I was on my knees in tears, and that's okay because that means I'm touching into the heart of God. I want to share with you something that should be relatively encouraging because when when we operate in our hope, our expectations are crushed. When we operate in faith, rewards occur. And that's what God's asking us to do is operate in our faith right now. We have been seeing our country denigrated for a very long time frame. But here's what I'm seeing on the other side of this. All of the systems we've talked about in the past are about ready to go away. Let me show you just a couple interesting memes points. This is MJ Truth. I love this guy. He's really cool. Um, he's talking about the bill that I believe it was from 2024, if I remember correct on that one. He's just talking about 1.2 trillion in spending. Now, this isn't every bit of spending. This is just one piece of the spending bill with it too. 850,000 for gay senior citizen home. Like, how much do you need for a place? Like, and who signs up for that? That that's telling you some weird weird fakeness with that too. Uh, 500,000 for a DEI zoo, an anti-racist nature appreciation program. Like, now we have to like categorize, animals in the DEI way, or the people that are responding to them in a DEI way. I mean, like, what world are we living in, right? 300 to 500 million to Ukraine. Again, that's telling you the freak, okay? Now, here's an interesting point that I want you to kind of catch, because when we hear Doge, there's a couple interesting patriots who are trying to make sense of the world, and they look at this point of Twitter, or they see Doge and they see Elon and Vivek being a part of it, and they're not catching the truth of it. So Elon cut 90% of his staff and is still working fine. Should we try that with the government? And I want you to catch the reality of what he actually did. I was talking last night at a friend of mine, Chad's, his dad's funeral, and I met a guy named George. Hey, George, if you're watching, sup? He and I were talking about taking over a business, and and we're going to use an example here. Let's just use an example that you're buying out a business, and it doesn't matter if it's a $1 million business or a $1 billion business. Okay, don't focus on the exact point of that. But we're going to just, for the heck of it, use the example of a $1 million business. Now, if that's their gross sales, many people think that they're worth, I mean, for to buy out because they're trying to sell it, right? And they want you to spend at least one times their gross sales, as if you're going to be able to accomplish that. And normally you want to be able to turn around a profit, be able to pay for that business and turn a profit within about 3 or so years. Now, it depends on how much you spend for that place and how big you are compared to what you're buying. So that's a relative amount. Like if you're a $50 million business and you're buying out a $1 million business, it's probably going to take you a very short time to turn a profit upon that based upon what you're trying to accomplish. Now, it always is what you're trying to accomplish. Now, if you take that $1 million business or 1 billion, again, we could use the same kind of math there. You're looking at the profit and loss, or it's called the P&L, and you're also looking at the balance sheet. You're trying to see where the fat is in here. You're also so no matter what happens, you're going to see a probable reduction in some capabilities until you translate them into your new business structure with that too, no matter what happens. Many businesses will see a 50% drop, especially if you have the primary owner of that business is now not in the position of authority. He or she might say, you know what, I'm not going to spend the time and effort to do it. So what happens is that you might spend a million or more if you're intending to take that business that has 10 employees, make up a number, 20 employees, whatever that is, and you're going to expand it to 40 employees so that you're going to make it worth and work in the range of $2 million, right? You're trying to see significant expansion. Now, if you take that same $1 million business and it's dying on the vine, and you don't believe that you're going to really recover it, but you see value in whether it's the customer database or you call it patient database or the clientele, however the wording is for that particular business, you're going to not necessarily pay a million, but you're going to pay less than that because what you're doing is you're going to collapse them into your own firm. And you might take in some of their employees, but you're collapsing the database inside of you that you can expand your capabilities with that too. So you're never going to spend that much money, especially if you're looking to collapse its capabilities with that too. Okay? That in mind, I want you to see this meme another time because I'm trying to get you to see the difference. Elon, whether you believe he's the Elon 1.0 or 2.0, it's not relevant in this matter. Elon takes a $44 billion bid, what was it, 2 years ago or so? And that, in every sense of the word, was overvalued. It was never valued more than $20 billion by any analyst out there. Now he pushed them and he gave 44 billion. Now in every economist viewpoint, I mean, listen, I look at valuations, okay? So I'm a minor economist and not like, some of the other major economists, but although some of the major economists are not catching the drift of the world. But in a minor economist mentality, should have taken that $44 billion company and made it worth 66 and $80 billion. Now, doesn't mean that it's not necessarily that value, but you definitely wouldn't reduce 80-90% of the staff members to accomplish that. That would be, you would probably spend, instead of that $20 billion that I'm mentioning, you probably only spend $10 billion. You're buying it on the cheap. By the way, I'm hearing that Elon potentially might be buying out MSNBC. And if he buys out MSNBC, he's not going to pay a premium on that kind of thing. That's probably going to be buying on the cheap. Okay? So what happens is that there was an opposite world response. But when Elon thinks about what's about to come, watch out. Give you another this is a funny meme that Babylon Bee does this all the time. Kamala Harris calls Dave Ramsey's show for advice on blowing 1 billion, it's really 1.3 billion in 3 months. And the reality is the left especially, but frankly, all of these political campaigns massively overspend for positions that never happen. In Tulsa area, there were state senators, sorry, I'm fixing something. Sorry about that. There were state senators that were going to be making a $45,000 a year job, and they were spending $20,000, $30,000 for a $45,000 a year job. That doesn't match. That doesn't jive, baby. And yet, Kamala spends in 90 days more money by 3 or 4 times, actually close to 4 times, 3 times the amount of what Trump spent. And Trump spent a lot at $394 million. What? How does someone spend $1.3 billion in 90 days? It boggles the mind. And that's the waste that we're seeing here, okay? So with those backdrop points that I gave you, and I'm sorry to kind of do this, but I want you to see some mentality when you watch mainstream media, okay? Because you got to see beyond the matrix that they're pushing. So I'll have little breaks in here, and then I'll jump in at the breaks with that too.
Close down entire agencies, like President Trump has talked about the Department of Education, for example. Are you going to be closing down departments?
We expect mass reductions. We expect certain agencies to be deleted outright. We expect mass reductions in force in areas of the federal government that are bloated. We expect massive cuts among federal contractors and others who are overbilling the federal government. So, yes, we expect all of the above. And I think people will be surprised by, I think, how quickly we're able to move with some of those changes, given the legal backdrop the Supreme Court has given us.
Okay. Let's deal with what Vivek is actually saying. He's saying that there are going to be massive cuts, and you've heard that in the past. That's not like a news flash to you. But when you have a Department of Government Efficiency and their whole job is to cut down, that's unprecedented. But let's use some non-matrix glasses, shall we? If we're talking about how we look at that circumstance, do you know that when he's saying there are he was giving you a conversation about SCOTUS in essence, allowing a mandate. What is he talking about? The Chevron doctrine. The Chevron doctrine, or the Chevron deference, basically allows the three-letter agencies to create regulations. Those regulations were elevated in essence to laws. And you go, well, it's not really laws. No, but here's what happens. They were unchallengeable. It's like the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit or 65-mile-an-hour speed limit, right? You can't necessarily challenge that because they're posting a law on the road. Now, if you're driving 70 in a 65 zone or a 68 and 70 zone, I mean, they're probably going to be a little more forgiving, right? But these regulations were treated as laws, like if you pass that barrier, we're going to smack you down. And we could close you, we could do a million different things. And that's what those three-letter agencies are doing. He's saying that because of the Chevron deference that basically washes away the 650 agencies that actually accomplish $2.4 trillion in our budget of those three letters. He has allowed that or is being allowed that mandate. The Chevron doctrine is so foundational. It basically says you don't get to make the rules up that we can't say, you know what, that's not constitutional. Baby, watch out. We had no idea. Most of us didn't have any idea that this was coming. It was.
Got what has been called a deep state. You've got people who have been career bureaucrats in place right now. Didn't President Biden put in plans to ensure that you're not going to be able to fire those people at all? How do you get around that? And, I asked Joni Ernst, are you for term limits? She says, yes, I am for term limits, as long as the people around me are also for term limits. That's not in place right now. So how do you get rid of those people who are dug in?
Well, a lot of what's happened is President Biden has made a lot of changes trying to entrench the administrative state. The Supreme Court has slapped them on the wrist numerous times. So we're working with a legal landscape here that is historic. You think...
Wait a second. Again, he's using the Chevron deference. But Maria is actually, I can't remember, was she a lawyer, a judge? I don't, she was one of those. But the point is she's the lawyer who could have been a judge. I don't know what that circumstance is. But she knows the point here. Biden tried to put in regulations to prevent a two-term limit, or allowing the deep state to stay in the face of Trump being back in his second term. You see, in his first term, Trump was setting up how he was going to take the deep state out. He was president and CIC of the corporation. As they began to delete the corporation through Executive Order 13818 and others, by the way, what he was doing is ripping out the sockets, in essence. He's ripping the foundations out so that you could, in essence, sweep the legs of the particular agency. And for a time, this is the weird part. From 2021 on, we've seen who's the president of the corporation? Biden. But he didn't have the football. Now, President Trump was the CIC of the Constitution. And Vivek understands this. This is the cute point that comes out, but it's kind of underneath the radar. It messes up your brain with that too. Let's watch a little bit more.
About a president of the United States like Donald Trump, elected with the mandate he's been given, both chambers of Congress belonging to Republicans, a 6-3 conservative majority in the Supreme Court. Maria, if we don't downsize the federal government now, it's never going to happen in the future as well. So this is a historic opportunity. We're not actually going to squander this, but I think part of the key is to move quickly, to move effectively. I think that mass deregulation that I talked about earlier, that gives us the industrial logic to then make cuts to that bureaucracy, and moving quickly is our objective.
You see, they're going to move super, super fast. Watch them come.
Have you thought about moving some of these departments or agencies out of Washington?
It's funny you bring up this point. Yes is the answer, but here's why. They'll say, well, what happens to the people who live in Washington, D.C.? Here's the dirty little secret in the federal bureaucracy today. Most people don't even show up to work. So if you require most of those federal bureaucrats to just say, like normal working Americans, you come to work 5 days a week, a lot of them won't want to do that. And by the way, that creates a logic for many of those agencies being outside of D.C. in the first place. So these are, again, examples. It's a great point you just brought up.
So would you
sweeping
move, for
changes
example,
we're able to make quickly.
You could move the energy department to Texas or to Pennsylvania. You could move agriculture somewhere else. Is
Yes.
that what you're thinking?
Well, look, I think that, yes, absolutely. But I think even bigger picture than that, many of these agencies should be downsized wherever they are. And for whatever does remain, move many of them out to be where they're more accountable to the people. And by the way, if you have many voluntary reductions in force of the workforce in the federal government along the way, great. That's a good side effect.
Okay, now think about that for a second. We know if you've studied any of this for a while, why do we have to come out of DC and be in Austin, Texas for potentially the Treasury, or to be in Minneapolis, or to be in Denver, or to be in Kansas City, or to be wherever that might be in those different places? Why isn't the FCC, for instance, in Kansas City, one of our greatest commercial points of communications throughout the nation? Here's what happens. The corporation is DC. When you take away those federal agencies and you take them down from, make up a number, they have 1,000 employees, and you do the downsize just like we're talking about here. You take that bloated carcass of $1 billion that they're taking every year for those 1,000 employees, making up a thing like FCC. You shove them in Kansas City, and now you have people who live in Kansas City, in essence, making up, the new rules, and they're outside of the corporation because we're deleting the corporation. I've been talking about this since the beginning of this, and it's hitting mainstream. You see, when that starts happening, you start seeing everything change.
But the real issue is there's just too many of them. We don't need 4 million, and we shouldn't have 4 million civil servants who or aren't even elected or can't be removed from their positions. It's anti-democratic.
Guys, how cool that we're going to have serious people involved in government again, right? It does get to what I said earlier. It's because he's clearly not hiring people because of their genitals or their skin color or anything else. So I absolutely believe Vivek, and I believe Elon when they're like, we're going to delete departments. We are going to fire tons of people. We're going to find all the missing money and the ridiculous inefficiencies.
When that happens, and by the way, what did Elon say during Trump's speeches? Especially, I think it was in the Florida area when Elon came down. And he's jumping up and down. He's got the black hat. Catch that point with MAGA on it, right? And he says, and there's a conversation that he basically is asked, well, how much are you going to reduce the government down? What could you do it by? And he goes, $2 trillion. What? But here's what happens. Now, not saying that you do it all through the three-letter agencies, but if the three-letter agencies are 650 different agencies doing $2.4 trillion, what if you cut 20 down to 20% of its capability? What, that's $480 million instead of 2.4, or excuse me, sorry, $480 billion instead of 2.4 trillion. I mean, maybe it's that. Maybe it's $200 billion that they're spending upon that. Maybe it's 400 million. It's not really relevant in that way. We're not going to lose capabilities, but what we're going to do is streamline. And that's what you do when you buy low. Now, see, I've bought businesses at a low point, and you're looking to turn a profit based upon the capabilities, but you're going to strip them down. You're going to strip them bare.
Business really start flourishing, but you will have more money in your pocket because the government won't need to take as much from you. So even if you're kind of like a limp-wristed lefty right now and you're just like, oh my God, it's all so terrible, you might want more money in your pocket if nothing else, right? Like that,
Wouldn't you? See, most of the lefties don't get it because this is actually going to be massively good for them. It doesn't matter. The normies people have asked me, like, this Nassara thing doesn't feel like it's going to be a benefit to me. No IRS? The debt gets wiped off? We go to a gold-backed currency, which makes your value of your money higher? Make it make sense.
all actions of the Department of Government Efficiency will be posted online for maximum transparency. Anytime the public thinks we are cutting something important or not cutting something wasteful, just let us know. We will also have a leaderboard for the most insanely dumb spending of your tax dollars. This will be both extremely tragic and extremely entertaining. Guys, this is what we've all wanted.
And when you see that kind of response of transparency within government, it's exactly what Trump talked about in January 20th, 2017. We're giving the power back to the people. It's taken longer than any of us would ever want it to be. But by the way, some people say, well, he's going to do it gently and we're going to have to get rid of the swamp in that same time frame. Let me ask you a question. If you're in a war, and give an example of World War II, do you start to rebuild while you're taking out your enemy? Do you? What happens when you're in the middle of war? You're destroying, right? Let's just even use the Japanese who were hanging on by a bloody thread. We would island hop and we would go to Iwo Jima and they would be down, what, to the last 100 people? And you're going, wait, those things really occurred. They would do a bayonet charge with one round in their rifles. They had no capabilities to win, but that's what occurred. We are seeing some of that level of desperation in the idiot cabal. And when you see that thing ripped down, they're coming at this with everything they've got left, and they got almost nothing left. But that is the destruction point that occurs. You don't build up when you're still in the war. You build up after the war. How do we respond to that? How do we think non-matrixly? In essence, did I just make up a word? I think I did. But how do you think non-matrixly in this way? Meaning, what has to happen is we have to have an EBS before Trump starts fixing the world. You have to have ended the capability of the enemy so there's no more destruction that's out there. It's coming, guys. Hope that helps you out. Thanks so much.